Hi guys, it's Miss Carmen again, and I'm glad to be back this week with another project. This week I'm going to be doing a glue batik resist project. Now batik is an ancient practice that involves stamping with hot wax or painting with hot wax onto a fabric, and then the fabric is dyed, and then the stamped pattern resists the dye, so it creates a beautiful wax resist effect. Now we're not going to be using hot wax, but we are going to be using glue. Batik is commonly found in Indonesia, Africa, Japan, and India. It's over 2,000 years old. It's been used for centuries, and usually you'll draw a motif or a pattern on the fabric, and that's what we're going to do today. Today I'm not going to do any specific pattern. I'm just going to do some zigzags, line, dots, whatever I feel comfortable doing. So what I'm going to be using is I have a piece of parchment paper or wax paper under my cloth. The cloth is just an old pillowcase cut up. I would use cotton or some kind of natural fabric. And I've just cut off a square of an old pillowcase. I have it on the wax paper. That keeps the cloth from getting glued to my table, and it also protects my table when I go to dye it with my acrylic paint and water mixture. I'm just using some cheap acrylic paints. I think these were donated to me. So I'm just going to use some of these. If you have these craft paints, they should work too. So I'm just going to be using those, but not right away. The first thing I'm going to do is create my pattern. So I'm going to create, you could do a series of overlapping circles, or you could do dots. You could draw out a nice floral pattern, which I did on my practice run, but I had a little bit of a problem with my paint leaking because I rushed the project. So I'm going to try to do it over this time and do it correctly. So what I'm going to do is take my glue, and I'm going to start to draw my pattern onto the paper. Like I said, you can draw a picture, or you can just draw some squiggles or circles overlapping. Whatever you choose to do is fine. So I'm going to make sure that I'm not using too much glue. Let me test it on a piece of paper here. Let's see, I want to make sure I'm not using too much glue. That should be about right. Sometimes if you open it all the way, you get too much glue and it takes even longer to dry. So I'm just going to start drawing a pattern. Okay, so the pattern I'm doing so far are just 5 lines down, 5 lines across, 5 lines down, and I'm just alternating it. I think I'm going to throw some dots in between here. I'm just continuing with the same pattern. I'm doing 5 lines. I'm just kind of alternating like this. With the glue, I'm making sure not to get too thick. Okay, I've got my pattern already drawn out. It's just alternating the lines, which direction they're going. I tried to keep it kind of simple. I did a run through of this project. Now, it's important that this dries all the way because when I did the run through, I tried to speed it up so I could get the project to you quicker. And it turned out that the colors ran a lot more. I mean, it doesn't look bad, but it's not how I wanted it to come out. So I thought I would try again and take my time this time. So I'm gonna let this dry all the way. And after it's completely dry, which could take, you know, a couple hours. If you used a whole lot of glue, it could take overnight, unless maybe you sit it in the sun to dry nicely. But do make sure it is dried all the way before you do this next step. I made that mistake earlier, and I'm trying to save you some hassle. So I'm gonna let this dry, and then I'll pick it back up when it's finished. Okay, I'm back, and my pattern's dry. I'm going to use some blues and greens and yellows. And I'm going to mix a good bit of paint in with the water. I want it to be not super thick, but not super watery. I really want the paint to stick. So I'm going to use a good bit of paint, but I want it watery enough so that it spreads around pretty easily. So I'm just mixing some paint in with some water in a little glass. And I know this yellow doesn't tend to stick very well, so I'm going to add a little more paint here. And I'm just going to start painting on top of my design. All right, now I'm going to take my blue and I'm going to go on this edge over here. You can do whichever color you want. Just make sure you have enough paint that it's going to stick fairly well, because it will wash out some when you scrub out the glue. I'm going to have them just kind of bleed into each other a little bit. Oh no. Well, you know what? Fine. Maybe I'll make some polka dots on top of this. Let's just go with it, I guess, huh? Sometimes when we make an accident that we can't really recover from, we just lean into it. Here we go. And put it in our design. Not all the time, but sometimes we will. We don't want to throw things away the first time we make a mistake. I made a mistake on this one earlier in that I rushed it. And it still looks pretty cool. I mean, it didn't come out exactly right, but I kept it. It's something I can learn from, and I might be able to use it in another piece of artwork. I might be able to collage it into a painting later. You never know. Or you might just go back into it and paint on top of it some. But we don't want to throw things away or erase them or tear them up just because we make a mistake. It's good to look at that stuff and learn from it. You know, I think I'm going to use blue on the other side too. I was going to put green on there, but I'm kind of getting green where it's fading into the edges here, and I like it. So I'm just going to roll with it. All right, I'm gonna go back with this yellow. It's just kind of fun to experiment with the different colors. All right. So I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to take it and rinse it in the sink to get the glue off. I'm not sure how it's going to come out at this point. You know, you're going to have to expect that things may run a little or they may fade a little, and that's part of the fun. It's just the excitement of seeing what you get. So I'm going to let this dry, and then I'll rinse it out and come back. So after it dries, I'm going to rinse it in cold water in the sink and just try to scrub some of that glue out. And hopefully there will be white areas where the glue was. So we'll see how it comes out. Okay, I rinsed it out, and the yellow did not show the pattern like it should have. It was just a little too light. So I just went back on top of it with some of the blue, and I'm letting that dry. So after I rinsed it, when I saw the yellow had rinsed out too much and it really wasn't showing a pattern, I went back with the blue just to fix it, touch it up a little bit. I've also cut up the other piece that I didn't care for and kind of playing around with it to see if there's any way I can integrate them. But it's a really cool experiment. You learn about batik, you learn about resist. You could always take this and mount it on a piece of paper and frame it, and it would look really nice. If you do it in some really woodsy neutral colors, it would look cool. You could do a couple of these and then stitch them together and have a cool art piece. So it's just another technique, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it. Oh no, I hope you don't have cat hair on it like mine. Never fails. Anyway, hopefully I will see you back next week, and see you then.